All right, so we're starting with dealing with risk and uncertainty, right? That's the area we're starting with today. So you all know that risk is something that we know the possibilities and probabilities of, so we're taking risk. Uncertainty is when you really don't have any idea as to what may happen, right? There are three types of decision makers. Basically, there are risk seekers who go for it and they take the risk. So they are max, right? Risk neutral, meaning these guys not take too much risk, nor do they play too very safe. They are risk neutral. They go with the average, right? Risk averse are like guys who don't want to regret, nor do they want to take any risk, right? So they are risk averse. They think of the worst situation at all times. Decision rules, maximax, where you look for the highest possible outcome. You are a risk seeker, right? So you look at all the highest payoffs and you select the highest out of the highest. Maximin selects the alternative with the highest return under the worst situations. So you look at all the worst situations, and out of the worst situations, you look at what the best is. Minimax regret is where you don't want to regret at all. So therefore you choose the option where you have the least amount of regret. Expected value is basically average calculation, and risk neutral managers will generally make their decisions based on expected values. So you know, payoff tables are used, right, to make these decisions. So you all know how to calculate expected values as well. The outcome multiplied by the probabilities, right? And expected values are often good when decisions are repeated multiple times, right? But how do you calculate value of perfect information? We have to take the expected value with perfect information. If we had perfect information, what would our expected value be? Minus expected value without the perfect information. Best outcomes, yes. And expected value without perfect information is if you didn't have any knowledge, what option will you choose? The highest one. You subtract the two, the difference in value is the value that you would pay to obtain perfect information. You know, decision trees are also drawn to make decisions. Yeah, it's hot. Sensitivity analysis basically measures how sensitive variables are to, or how sensitive profit is to changes in different variables. How do you calculate price sensitivity? Required decrease in sales to become like zero profit divided by the total sales into 100. Basically, this required decrease and increase is the profit amount. The less lower the percentage, it's more sensitive. So that's a little risky then. Right? Lower percentages are more sensitive. Variable cost sensitivity, required increase in variable cost. So how much more can variable cost go up before profit becomes zero? That's basically the profit figure that you have to take at all times. Divide by total variable cost into 100. Sales volume sensitivity, we look at the decreased contribution. How much contribution should decrease by before profit goes to zero? That's also profit figure. Divided by the total contribution into 100. For sales volume, we use the total contribution. Fixed cost sensitivity, required increase in the fixed cost. That's also the profit amount, right? That how much fixed cost should increase by before profit goes to zero. It's basically the profit amount. Divide by the total fixed cost into 100. Drawbacks, it's optimizing techniques, and you generally make a lot of assumptions here. We assume that only one variable is changing at a time. In reality, multiple variables may change at any particular time. Stimulation is like a system where we change many variables at one time, right? But what happens with stimulation is we cannot do it manually. It's done using computer technology. Very complicated. Focus groups, you know, it's a market research technique where you get like very well-educated people in a team and make them discuss on different aspects of product, right? So, you know, market research is also undertaken in order to find out about customer needs and wants, right? So that why is market research done? Because you can reduce the level of risk and uncertainty. That's why it's relevant in this chapter. Okay, then we are going to a question on risk and uncertainty. The last question you sent, I couldn't check. I will check it. Because last 2 days I had another class that I was very occupied with, like late nights. Yesterday also finished the class at 3 o'clock in the night. Really? Yeah. Because that student has an exam, right? So she wanted me to like do it with a foreign student. So I was finished at 3 last night. Started at I think about 11 o'clock. No, it was it's a foreign student for A-level, O-level business studies. She has the exam tomorrow. Today is the paper. A-level exams, O-level exams. So she wanted me to do more questions after like normal class hours. So I was like basically doing the class till 3. So last whole week I was busy with her exams, so I couldn't. Every day I had classes with her. Okay, Stowe Hotel, the managers of did I do it? No, right? Stowe Hotel, the managers of Stowe Hotel are trying to decide on their pricing strategy for the next financial year. Occupancy levels depend on the price charged, and the managers are trying to decide between charging 180, 200, or 220 a day. The variable cost of running the hotel are uncertain due to fluctuations in prices of food and energy. Cost may be high, most likely, or low. Cost, we don't know what it's going to be like. The management accountant has produced a profit table payoff matrix summarizing the possible levels of contribution for each price charged. Right? So the state of variable cost is given, like it can be 180, 200, or 220. If the variable cost is high, then they have given you the amount of profit, right? Yeah. If so, oh wait. This is the state of variable cost, high, low, most likely low. 180, 200, and 220 are the client fees. So when you charge a client fee of 180 and if the variable cost is high, you will make a profit of 1,339. When you charge a client fee of 180 and if the variable costs were most likely like what you call like a medium level of cost, then the profit will be 1,496. If in case the variable cost was low, then the profit you will make at that point is 1,733. Right? If you charge a client fee of 200 and the costs are high, most likely low, they have given you the different profits. The probabilities of variable cost levels occurring at the high, most likely, and low levels are estimated to be high. Variable cost can be high 10% of the time. It can be low, most likely 60% of the time, and it can be low 30% of the time. Match the fee that should be chosen using the maximax and maximin decision rules. Now, maximax guys go with the what outcome? Highest out of the highest. So for every price option, you look at the highest outcome. For 180, what's the highest? For 200, 1,706. For 220, 1,575. So out of the highest, what is the highest? 1,733. So this guy is going to select what price? 180 price option. How does the maximin guy select? You take all the lowest outcomes, highest out of the lowest. So what are the lowest outcomes? At 180, what's the lowest outcome? 1,339. At 200, what's the lowest? 1,378. At 220, what's the lowest? 1,313. Out of all the lowest, what's the highest? 200, no? So he will select 200. Next same question, I'm not reading it again. Okay. What are the expected values of contribution for each strategy? So how do you calculate the expected values? For 180 price, how will you calculate the expected value? 1,339, most high is, what's the probability? 0.1. 1,339 into 0.1 plus 1,496 into 0.6 plus 1,733 into 0.3. Correct or wrong? Right. So tell me the value. Shall we calculate the expected? Hi, Atika. Atika, how's studying going? And have you watched last week's TRG? Because I didn't see you join last week. Have you watched it? So how do you calculate expected value for the 180 price option? Okay. Have you done papers? Like, are you able to answer? I sent some papers on the group today. That's just for you all to practice. This is. You have those resources. I got it from Telegram group today.
From the
Yeah. I thought I'd just send it to you also if you all want extra papers. Try those questions. I sent the short notes as well. Yeah. What is this? What's the Isn't it right?
This is open tuition transfer.
Open tuition is okay, but it's short, man. The notes are like too very, it's too short.
But for
I will not recommend it.
I use open tuition.
You can just do questions from there, no problem. Guys, what was the expected value here?
1,551.
Okay, then how do you calculate for the 200 option? I'll just do only 200 option. 1378 can happen 10% of the time, so you multiply by 10% that. Plus 1509 can happen 60% of the time, because most likely is 60% of the time, plus this is 30% of the time. What's the expected value for that? If you're very confident with your answer, you can directly go with B.
1,500.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy, right? The only problem here is I can't select a rectangular box. So I'm not calculating for C because I'm confident on my answer, right? It's B, but I really can't answer. So I'm skipping. The answer is B, guys. What are the regrets for each fee strategy for the low levels of variable cost? How do you calculate regrets? Oh no, how do you calculate regret? We have to go one by one. If the state of variable cost was high, we have to do it horizontally. If the way, no, they have calculated the regrets for 2. Can you see that? If the level of regrets were, can I take a screenshot of this? Oh, not it.
You could use the system.
Okay.
I don't think it is.
Okay, so how do you calculate the regrets? How do you calculate the regret? You first look, okay, from the highest outcomes, but you do it horizontally. Highest, if the variable cost was high, you would have wanted to go with which price option? That is, you would have wanted to go with the 200 option. So in case the variable cost was high and you had picked 180 option, what's your regret? So you have to take 1378 minus 1339. They have calculated the regret for that, so we don't have to waste our time. We only have to calculate it for the last one. So now low price option, what's the best situation to be in this? So here you have 0 regret, correct? If you had selected 180, you will have 0 regret. But if you had selected this, what's your regret? 1733 minus 1706. Okay. What if you had selected this? What's your regret? You have to compare it with the best outcome. You feel like in vain I should have gone with 180, I could have made 1733, but because I went with 220, I made how much less? I could have made 1733, but now I made 1575, so I made how much less? 158. So 27,158. What's your 0, 27,158? D, I can't select again. D is the answer. The management of store hotel are risk seekers, they are saying. Which decision making technique is appropriate for risk seekers? Maximax. Huh? What did I do? Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally put Maximin, but it's Maximax, right? I told you all it's Maximin. Identify by selecting the relevant box in the table below whether each of the following statements regarding the use of expected values in decision making are right or wrong. Now, you all tell me the answers. I'm going to go with your answers. They accurately reflect the risk associated with each decision.
No.
They accurately reflect the risk associated. You all are saying incorrect. What is about Ashmat? Okay. What do you say? What about Atika? What do you say for that? They accurately reflect the risk associated with each decision. Expected values. Does it accurately reflect the risk? Atika, what would you have gone with? You would have said incorrect. Actually, sir, I have to read this. And then you will tell me. Yeah, they say expected value can be seen to ignore the risk as the range of possible profit outcome is not considered. You only take it's average, right? It's average, right? Listen. Expected value is average.
Probability.
It's average, right? Whatever you're using probabilities and taking an average. Averages, what happens with averages? There are certain outcomes that can be very high and very low. Can you see that? So it basically dilutes. But anyways, what's your answer going to be now? You all tell me. Okay, Ashmat has changed his decision. They are more appropriate for actions that will be repeated many times. I told you expected values are good for outcomes that are repeated many times. They may be unreliable as the probabilities used are estimates. They are used by risk neutral decision makers. Right. So this is that area, risk and uncertainty, which is a pretty simple area. It's not hard, right? It's not at all hard. Be very careful with the regret table, right? Know which side to go with the regret table. See, like, okay, look at the outcomes, right? That is what you look at. So if this outcome was there, what is the best price we should have charged, right? Then you circle that and then select the other two, which other two decisions you compare with that. Regret table, just be very careful. Do it smartly, there is no problem with that. After risk and uncertainty, budgets, budgetary system and types of budgets.
Where's the exam center located?
Where is the exam center you have got? Have they given you all exam center? Have they? What's the one? Colombo. Not sure. Fifth?
Yeah.
In what?
Distance learning center.
Oh, distance learning center. I've heard of that.
Mine is Oasis. Distance learning last.
Budgetary systems.
They are taking a payment. They can't take a payment. In distance learning.
Budgeting and control. Oh, even Atika is doing the exam at distance learning. Budgeting and control. So you all know budgets are prepared. Like, you know, there are three kinds of planning, and budgets are a system of planning, right? Budget is a method of planning, right? You have long-term planning, where you plan for the 5 to 10 year time. Then, you know, long-term plans are based on your objectives. Budgetary systems, you can, you know, are useful for planning, even controlling. Why? Because your final actual results can be compared with budget, right? It can motivate staff. It's a method of communication, and also you can assess your performance based on budgets. When you are preparing your budgets, now increasingly it's important to understand ethical aspects, and you have to incorporate them in your budget. For example, if sourcing ethical raw materials is expensive, you have to give that raw material a little bit higher budget as well. So you have to incorporate aspects of being ethical and sustainable when preparing your budgets as well. There are different kinds of budgets. What is a rolling budget? A rolling budget is a budget where you always want to have a budget for a particular period. So when one quarter finishes or one period finishes, you plan on a rolling basis for the next quarter. Remember, rolling budgets, right? So they're suitable in situations where the environment is rapidly changing, but it could be very tiring task to do rolling budgets. Yes, don't remove that wires. It can be a very tough task to prepare rolling budgets. Why is that? Because you have to continuously update, right? It's time consuming, right? And it's expensive, right? But however, the other thing is the employees can get so much, they can spend so much time preparing the budgets that they may oversee other important aspects of the business. Then you have incremental budgeting, or a very easy type of budgeting. It's suitable in a stable environment, right? Where you take last year's budget and simply increase for this year's, like inflation and small increments, right? So it's very easy to do, but the problem is last year's inefficiencies are carried forward to next year. right? And last year if you spent more, this year also you'll be encouraged to spend more. Last year's budgets. Sometimes it could be actually, but most of the time you take the last year's budget. That's the whole idea. Last year's budgets could be outdated, and if so, then this year's budget is also like outdated, right? Zero based budgeting is the complete opposite, where every single period you start like zero based.
It's like when they just a question regarding like budgeting 6 and C question.
Yeah.
Like say implemented budgeting, we have to like recommend the form of budgeting.
Yeah, they might ask you what is it a suitable method of budgeting.
Like so budget question and then they were like implemented budgeting. And then the marketing scheme don't use either of them, zero based budgeting would be better.
Maybe they've asked you, the question might have asked you to recommend whether it was a suitable technique to use.
Or maybe they get to access the budget.
If they ask you to assess the system, you have to talk about drawbacks, what do you think, whether it's a suitable method, what do you think is better in this situation. Then you have to evaluate, assess, you have to talk about those, right? So then, yeah, zero based budgeting is when you budget right from the beginning, right? Yes.
Like when you promise. There, it is a variance question. So the first A part said that calculate the material usage rate, and B and C each had calculate the yield and one is mix. So just if I know yield and mix, I can obviously find usage, and that's how the answer was solved. So is it okay like if they do B and C first and then take those values and put them?
But there should have been a way of finding the usage first. That's why they gave usage first. No, but okay, in the exam, if you get stuck, no problem. Work backwards. If you get stuck, work backwards. Not an issue. No, she's saying in the same question, they asked us usage first, then the other two. But she knows to find the other two, she doesn't know to find usage. So then no problem. You can work those two, add to yield and mix together gives usage, right? If you're stuck, you can do it that way, no problem, right? That will give you an answer. Yeah, that's because it's final answers that matters, right? Zero based budgeting is when you prepare right from scratch. This is very suitable in a situation where the environment has changed a lot. But you know, some companies, they don't only have to always use zero based budgeting. What many governments do is on and off they use zero based budgeting, and the other periods they use incremental budgeting. Can you understand? So it can also be performed as a timely exercise, because what happens with zero based budgeting is every single expense they will have to draw a decision package, they'll have to brainstorm, think whether it's needed, not needed, and you have to get approval, and then only you go ahead with a certain expense. So the resources are very accurately allocated. It's a very good form of budgeting, but it's extremely time consuming and expensive, because they are responsible as somebody else's money, so they have to be careful with that.
Get the money, we have to do
Budget. That's because you all are doing zero based. So the resources are allocated definitely more efficiently. There is no slack, because you have to justify everything, so you cannot put slack in. It improves understanding of cost. It increases staff motivation because they are also involved in the budgeting process, and it's mainly used in the public sector. However, it's time consuming. Staff may need training to use this. Difficult to define decision units. It's a rigid and like time consuming process. You might neglect long term, you might neglect your focus or attention on other important aspects of business. It could be very demotivating as well, because employees are continuously asked for justification and employees may not want to give that. Activity based budgeting, here you find the cost per drivers and you budget based on this. Now you know, okay, cost per delivery is this much. This year we are going to have this many deliveries. Therefore, the total delivery cost will be number of delivery into the cost per delivery. So you are using the cost driver to do your budgets. So if you reduce your activity, you can if you're basically reducing activity, meaning, for example, reduce your deliveries. This will reduce the overhead cost. In turn, that will reduce the total budgeted cost as well. So it's about managing your cost drivers and the activities. It's activity driven. It's a way of controlling the drivers and then controlling the costs. It shows you what activities do not add value. Maybe you can reduce on them. It's the attention is focused on reducing the costs here. Disadvantages: it's a complex budgeting system. You have to find the cost per drivers, which is like a 4-step process, right? Remember? Staff may be resistant to use ABC, especially if they have not learned their principles. And in a real world company, to do ABC is not very easy, right? You gather so much data. Staff may require training. It may be difficult to identify the cost drivers. Detailed data may be necessary. What is feed forward control? Is basically before something happens, you try to understand, okay, this might happen, and therefore you're trying to rectify what you may do in the future so that the correct action is taken. Feedback is after something happens, you give feedback. It can either be a positive feedback or a negative feedback. What is a closed loop system? This is when a feedback comes to you, right? In any form, a feedback comes to you. Open loop system, do you get feedback? No. See, feed forward. Now, if we were going to do work according to actual result, you can see our performance would have been very low. But we identified at the current date. Therefore, we rectify our mistakes and we do change our action plans so that we can go according to the budgeted plan. So, master budgets are there, where that is the budgeted income statement, balance sheet, cash budget altogether. Functional budgets are the budgets for different areas, sales budget, material budget, you all have done for MA, labor budget, overhead budget. What is flex budget? Is when you can change a budget for the actual level of activity. So, budget is given for about 2-3 levels of activity. So, we can flex it. Flexible budgets are also prepared in a way that, you can flex it according to the actual activities. There are two kinds of budgeting. It can be top down, where the management, top level management sets the budget and they impose it on the bottom level. It is suitable in a situation where there are unskilled workers and, let's say, a very critical situations, right, where there is no time to discuss. So not that it's a bad method, it's a good method in certain situations. Just like that bottom up budgeting, you get everyone involved in the budgeting process. So it can be motivating. There are 3 kinds of budgeting styles. Budget constraint, you're too much focused on the budget. Profit constraint, you're okay as long as you make profit. Remember? Non-accounting is basically you're giving importance to like customer satisfaction and things like that. So it's okay, whatever we spend, our budget doesn't matter as long as our non-accounting goals are met. Right? So traditionally, budgeting was like a way of reducing costs. But I think you all learned about the beyond budgeting concept, right? Where we do not only stick to a budget, right? Like for example, we do not judge our managers only based on budget. We judge their performance based on like the actual situation. Remember, can you understand? So we don't no longer go by a full like a strict budget. We allow variations for the budget when the actual situations change, right? Because we don't want to be too strict on our staff, especially in areas where they have no control over. And in today's time, the main thing is the environment is rapidly changing. So we need to give them, we need to give them some space, right? Or we need to give them some, let's say in a tough situation, if they have done better than what they would have otherwise, we have to give them some credit for it. So we want to motivate our staff at all times. We want to move ahead with their support. Right, so we do not stick to a traditional budgeting system. Now we have introduced the concept of beyond budgeting, where budgets are allowed to be flexible. Okay, so that's budgeting, but I'm also going to look at the quantitative aspects of budgeting before we start questions on it. What were the quantitative aspects of budgeting we learned? We learned about the need for forecasting, simple average growth models, like how to calculate growth. We learned the high-low method, which you all already know. Time series, we learned about the time series or the sales can be affected by the trend, seasonal variation, cyclic variation, and random variations. Random variations and cyclic variations we often do not take. Random variations are generally not taken in the budgeting. Why? Can we predict random events? Right, so that is not taken in a budget. Cyclic variations also for your ACCS syllabus, it's not going to be tested much, right? How do you calculate the trend? There are 2 ways to calculate trend. That's the normal way the sales moves. It can be calculated using what? The moving average method, right? Or what is the other way of calculating the trend? Trend is the way that, it's the way in which sales or something moves over time, the pattern. You can calculate it using the moving average or the regression analysis. Y equals A plus BX. We can even use that to calculate trend. Seasonal variations are variations that occur due to different seasons. It could be the weather, it could be annual events, or it could be the timings that people shop, right? Cyclic variations are variations that occur due to the economic cycle, right? Random variations occur due to random events. Identifying the trend. Trend can be identified using the line of best fit or the regression method, right? Or even the moving average method. How do you calculate moving average? Do you all remember 4-point moving average? Remember that because this the what happens with the 4-point moving average, the total average doesn't go in between one, right? It's basically, it doesn't have a period that it corresponds with, it's in the middle. So to bring it to the middle, to bring it in line with the period, what do? You have to calculate an average of the average. You all remember that? These can come right in exams. I'm going to do a question. Identify seasonal variation. How do you find the seasonal variation? The actual sales minus the trend. Trend is what? Trend is the final moving average you find. Okay. Do you all remember this? How you adjust this seasonal variation? You have to take the daily seasonal variation and the addition. Now this is minus 3.3. No, it should add in the additive model. It should add up to what? 0. So you need to that minus 3.3. You have to add that back, meaning an equal amount is added to every day. Remember that? Right. So that is the adjusted average. Multiplicative model. How do you find the sales there? Trend equals, or seasonal variation equals, actual sales divided by the trend. Actual sales divided by the trend, right? That's a seasonal variation. In the multiplicative model, basically if there are 5 periods, this should add up to 5. It's almost 5 here, no? So we ignore that. Can you understand? If it is 6 periods, it should add up to 6. Otherwise, you have to do adjustment. How do you get the deseasonalized sales? Actual sales plus negative variations, or actual sales minus the positive variations. Do you all remember seasonally adjusted data? To get deseasonalized sales, for the additive model, subtract positive variations from actual data and add negative variations. For multiplicative model, how do you find deseasonalized sales? Actual sales divided by seasonal variation factor. These are areas that are very often coming now, right? Because these are new syllabus areas. Have you studied this?
Yeah.
Right? So deseasonalized sales multiplicative model, how do you find it? Actual sales, the Y divided by the seasonal variation factor. So here for Monday, 7,500 divided by 0.91. Deseasonalized sales. What do you mean by deseasonalized sales? After the seasonal effect, sales were 7,500. What was the seasonal effect? Seasonal sales were only 91%. So what was 100%? Before the seasonal variation, how much was the sales then? Can you see that? That's what it means. Because of the season, it has reduced to 91%. Can you see that? Next one, 0.898, meaning the 8,100 represented that much. So what was the sales before that? So we divide it by that. Sales meaning without the seasonal effect. If not for the seasonal effect, what would sales be? Can you understand what it means? Forecasting using time series, I think you all know this, right? There the trend line is given and you have to they take X is the time period. You can find the sales and then you have to adjust for the quarter accordingly. So this is the time series model. It's a way you predict sales of the future. Correlation, you all know, relationship between variables. They can be positively correlated, meaning the two factors have a positive relationship. Negative correlation, when one goes up, the other goes down. There can be perfect correlation. It can be perfect positive or perfect negative. It's like in a perfect straight line. Zero correlation doesn't have any relationship. I saw in that paper I sent you, they had asked to calculate R, the correlation coefficient. So the formula for R is given in your exam. Did you do this? The exam paper also had this. No, I'm talking about the paper I sent in the group today. That was not the exam paper. Today what I sent is a different paper. That paper had it, right? So these are MA areas. But you still may be asked to calculate it. This formula is given in the exam. In this, when you're calculating, you have to be very careful with the brackets. Coefficient of determination is R squared. It basically tells you how much of the how much of the dependent variable is affected by the independent variable.
Yeah, that is how.
Basically, how much of sales is affected by advertising. You understand?
Only is
It's a relationship.
whether it's strong or
Strong or not. Coefficient of determination shows you how much of x, how much of y is affected by x. Right? So basically, let's say if this is 60%, that means 60% of sales change is due to advertising change. The other 40% of changes in sale is due to other factors. Right? Regression analysis is a way that you can calculate, A and B, right? What is A? A can be the fixed cost, B can be variable cost. You generally, even with ILO method, we calculated variable cost first. So even with regression analysis, we calculate B first. Formulas are given in the exam. And A is the fixed cost, right? So then you have learning curve. Do you remember learning curve? You will be asked to calculate like decrease in time. And what is the main theory we use with learning curve? The cumulative average time is assumed to decrease by constant percentage of learning every time that output doubles. So what's the idea behind learning curve? When you repeat a job many times, right? Employees gradually learn to do it better. So they become more productive, they become more efficient. As a result, the time taken continues to reduce. But how does the time taken reduce according to theory? Every time the output doubles, we assume that a constant learning rate applies on the what time, not the total time, on the what time? On the average time. On the average time. Every time output doubles, the average time is reduced by a constant percentage. Right? There are two ways to calculate learning. One is the reducing cumulative average time by the learning rate every time output doubles, or by using the formula. Remember? Right? What's the learning formula? Y equals a x to the power b. What is y here? Average time to make. X units. This is given in the exam. Y is the average time, but they don't tell you what y is. Y is not the total time. Y is the what? Average time. A is the time taken to make the first unit. X is the number of units you are looking to make. And B is the log figure, log R, that's log learning rate divided by log 2. Right? And then with learning, at a certain point, we assume that after this, there will be no more learning, and this is the time we are going to be taking for all units made after this. That is called the steady state. Yes?
So the question was the learning rate, the learning stops at 1,000 units.
Okay.
So then from 0 to 1,000, estimate that the time was like going to concentrate down, like the cost should be like the labor cost per hour.
We have to find the average time it takes to make 1,000 units.
Yeah. And then I took the total of that. Then using the average, I took it for the remaining parts. But then in the answer I had done, like, took the whole amount just by using the average.
They are asking what is the question? Did they ask you? Yeah. Did they ask you what's the time taken to make the 1,000th unit?
No. The total, like, it was like total cost question. I had taken the total cost for producing 250,000. But then learning stopped at 1,000. So we had to find.
We have to find the time taken for the 1,000th unit.
999.
Yeah. That's why you have to do.
From 1,000 to 250.
No. They would have told for all units. You have to send me that question. Let's check it.
But I thought it was correct for assuming that.
Send me that question to see. So let me finish this. The steady state is basically after a certain point, we assume that time taken to make the certain number of units is the time taken to make all units after that. Right? That's a steady state. So learning effect works best when the workers are motivated, when you have a low turnover of workers, meaning workers don't leave. So they stay with you and they learn. Right? When the production process is itself repetitive, when you use labor intensive methods of production, right? And when the process is new, because that's when they learn the most. Limitations, you need to have stable conditions to make sure learning happens. Employees need to be motivated, but maybe not at all times they will be. They may not be motivated. If they are not, then it will be very difficult to implement learning. You need to have accurate and appropriate learning curve data to estimate There can be inaccuracy in estimating the initial labor requirement for the first unit. The time taken to make the first unit, we might not be able to estimate it correctly. If we don't estimate it correctly, then the data is wrong. Inaccuracy in estimating the output required before reaching a steady state. Now, I can easily tell you 1000th unit is the time taken to make 1000th unit is the time taken to make all other units after that. But sometimes in reality, it may not be so. It may be different. Right? It assumes a constant rate learning factor, but in reality, different rates of learning may be applied at different times. So those are the limitations. Can you tell me which question Azmat you're talking about? So we are done with the theory on budgeting. Let's look at questions on budgeting. Is it one of these questions?
No.
Let's look at the section C question.
DDP and Kaplan, I don't know the same question, but
Even the standing up and Kaplan.
Similar.
like all three of the same. I thought it would be different.
Very difficult. That's why I send that paper in case you all want more questions to practice. Did you all go through the ACCA that timed exams? Still you all get access to it.
Then,
Should ask them. No, I told you there are recorded papers.
no, they don't have, they don't have.
You're gonna ask it. How does she get access?
Like the past 5 years.
You have to fill the form.
To fill the form.
Yeah, you should every form that they.
Go and speak to Fali. Go and speak to Fali.
What do you call it?
The ACCA like the recorded sessions on the portal. Tell me Sharfa has recorded them and ask Azmat, I sending the paper.
Because simply like bring the papers here.
Yeah, okay, no
And
problem.
I have kept like,
So you can mark yourself.
yeah.
Okay, Newton School. Newton, Azmat, meanwhile, you can send that paper. I'll look at that as well. Newton School's head teacher has prepared the budget for the year ending 31st May 2005.
Their webinar.
Yeah, you can watch them. The government pays the school 1050 for each child registered at the beginning of the school year, which is 1 June, and $900 for any child joining the school partway through the year. The school does not have to refund the money to the government if a child leaves the school partway through the year. The number of pupils registered on 1 June 2004 is 690. See what they told now. You all are not listening, right? Azmat, you can listen to this. Azmat is not listening. Listen.
Is that with the
1 June and
It's TR.
TR ko I did right in class.
DDP?
TR ko I did. Okay. First, can I go ahead with this question? Okay, then we look at it.
I think I registered for that.
Okay, now listen. Which is 1st June. 900. The government pays the school 1050 for each child registered at the beginning of the school year, which is 1 June, and 900 for any child joining the school partway through the year. The school does not have to refund the money to the government if a child leaves the school partway through the year. The number of pupils registered on 1 June 2004 is 960, which is 10% lower than the previous year. Based on past experience, the probabilities for the number of pupils starting school partway through the year are as follows. Joining late 50 students 20% of the time, 20 students 30% of the time, 26 students 50% of the time. The head teacher admits to being poor with numbers and does not understand probabilities. So when calculating budgeted revenue, he just calculates a simple average for the number of pupils expected to join late. His budgeted revenue for the year ended 31 May 2005 is therefore as follows. Pupils registered at the beginning of the school year 690, rate per pupil 1050, so total income. By for everyone joining at the beginning of the year, you get 1050, right? Average expected number of new joiners 32. Rate per pupil he has taken as 900 because everyone who joins in the middle is given 900, but government gives 900 for them. So total income you can get from the government is 753,000 during the year. The head teacher uses incremental budgeting to budget his expenditure, taking actual expenditure of the previous year as starting point and simply adjusting it for inflation. So repairs and maintenance last year's was 44,000. He took the actual cost and adjusted. 44,000 this year he has increased for 3% inflation. Salaries actual cost for 620,000, he has increased by 2%. Capital budget expenditure 65,000, he has increased by 6% this year. But they have given you notes. Note number 1, repairs and maintenance. 30,000 of the cost for the year end 31 May 2004 to standard related to standard maintenance checks and repairs that have to be carried out by the school every year in order to comply with government health and safety. These are expected to increase by 3% in the coming year. In the year ended 31 May 2004, that's last year, 14,000 was also spent on redecorating some of the classrooms. No redecorating is planned this year. So is it right to take that also? They have taken the entire 44 and increased by 3%. This year we are not redecorating. They have just put a big slack there. One teacher in the salaries, one teacher earning a salary of 26,000 left the school on 31 May 2004 and there are no plans to replace her. However, 2% pay rise will be given to all the other staff who are remaining. So out of the 620, we have to remove that guy, this one who left, right? Her salary has to be removed. Then you have to increase by 2%. The full 65,000 actual cost for the year ended 31 May relates to improvements made to the school gym. This year, the canteen is going to be substantially improved, although the extent of the improvement and the level of service to be offered to pupil is still under discussion. There is a 0.7% charge that the cost of the canteen making will be 145. There is a 30% chance that it will be 80,000. These costs must be paid in full before the end of the year. But I don't know why they have not even taken the canteen cost. They have gone and taken last year's gym improvement cost in this year's budget. Can you see how wrong it is? The school's board of governance who review the budget are concerned that the budget surplus has been calculated incorrectly. They believe that it should have been calculated using expected income based on probabilities provided and using expected expenditure based on information provided in notes 1 to 3. Oh, they said even the income is wrong, it seems. Income, they have taken the average number of students to be 32. How did they take that? 50 plus 20 plus 26 divided by 3. See whether it comes to 32. They have taken the average number of pupils 32. How? 50 plus 70, plus 20, 70, 96, they have divided by 3. But they are saying no, not to take it like that. They are telling to take it based on the probabilities. That means how do we take? We have to take the expected value. So 50 into 0.2%, sorry, 50 into 0.2 plus 20 into 0.3 plus 26 into 0.5. We have to take the number of pupils like that. And even for the capital budget, we don't take the 65,000. It's not going to be spent. We have to take the cost of canteen building. That also they are asking us to take it based on expected expenditure. So we have to take 145,000 into 70% plus 80,000 into 30%. For the last 3 years, there have been shortage of cash despite a budget surplus being predicted. Since the school has no other source of funding available to it, these shortfalls have had serious consequences, such as the closure of the school kitchen for a considerable period in the last school year because they don't have money. Although this is showing like they're having money, but they don't have money, it seems. Meaning that no hot meals were available to pupils. This is thought to have been the cause of the 10% fall in the number of pupils registered at school on 1 June 2004. The school's board of governance have heard that zero-based budgeting and has requested advice on whether its application would be useful in improving Newton's budgeting process. Considering the views of the Board of Governance, recalculate the budget surplus deficit for the year ended 31 May 2005. They ask you to recalculate this. How did they get this 690 employees? No, the number of students registered on 1 June was already 690. So 690 beginning of the year registration is right. Right? So let's recalculate it.
Do they just add it to the LMS?
What?
Like this to the LMS? Do they send us?
It's in the LMS. Have you not checked the LMS? There are these things are there. That's why you're telling me it's not there. It's not there. It's there on the LMS. So pupils registered at the beginning. That's not going to change. That is 690. Into for one student, you're getting this much. Average number of pupils, expected number of new joiners. New joiners, how are we supposed to take the number? We take the expected value. That's 50 into.
Is it called the revision game plan?
Yes. Razi, how's studying going? Have you studied well enough? I saw you have registered for exams. Have you watched all the recordings? How much is that, this girl? That's 29. So 29 into 900 then. So what is your expected income then? Okay, what are your expected expenditure? We have to now adjust according to what they have said. Repairs and maintenance. They said last year 30,000 of the cost relates to standard maintenance, and they have to be carried out by school every year. These are expected to increase by 3%. So 30,000 we have to increase by 3%. Correct? 3%.
We can take decorator, right?
And they say, listen, 14,000 was spent on redecorating of the classroom. We are not going to do it this year. So do we have to take it? No. What did you say, this boy?
Calculator, like,
Yeah, you can take calculator.
it would be like,
What's the calculator you have?
I think
FX models are okay.
both ones are.
Yeah. Salaries. Kind of for ACC people. I don't know, double check, but I'm not sure. The salary is one teacher earning a salary of 26 left the school. So there's no plan to replace also. So when the salary is 620,000, I remove the 26,000 salary. And then I increase by 1 or 2%. 600 and 605,800. Capital expenditure. This 65,000 is not even going to happen this year. But what's going to happen this year? They are going to be building a no. They're going to be building a canteen. They're going to improve it. And there's 70% chance that the cost will be 145, and there's a 30% chance it will be 80. They have said they believe that it should have been calculated, the other one using expected income based on the probabilities given, and using expected expenditure based on the information provided in 1 to 3. That means here also we have to take expected expenditure. 145,000 we are expecting to happen 70% of the time, plus 80,000 we are expecting it to cost 30% return. What does it come to?
185, 500.
100 and?
25,000.
So what's the total expenses? So what's it, surplus or deficit? Now when you do the correct way, it's looking like a deficit. Can you see that?
Head teacher made this mistake. Wow.
Because she's not a finance person, she's a head teacher. That's what she's saying. They got a deficit of 5740. Where did we go wrong? Okay, I think that person, the salaried guy, left halfway. I did not consider that.
Ah.
One teacher left the school on 31st May 2004. She left the school halfway through. I really did not even see that. I really did not even see that. That head teacher, she left the school halfway through. Year started 1 Jan. When did the year start? 1 June. 1 June the year started. No. However, 2% pay rise will be given to all staff. It's not the person time the teacher left. Teacher left on time. She left on the end of the year. No problem. The pay rise will be given to all staff with effect from 1 December. So the pay rise is only given halfway through. So basically, head teacher leaving is not the problem here. 620,000. Let me go to the working below. What's the salary is expected this year? Salary is expected this year is 620,000 minus 26,000. So salary is expected this year is how much?
How many marks do we have lost?
We will have lost about 2 marks, I think.
Marks?
Yeah, it's important working. Why we lose the mark here and the mark here?
So we get the mark there, don't we get?
Others we get.
I mean, yeah.
This one depends. Name of this? No. It depends on how they have set the mark scheme. Newton school. So guys, listen. The first 6 months, no increment, right? So they'll simply be paid half of this. Correct? The next 6 months, that's December, January, February, March, April, May, June. 7 months. No, May, 6 months. It will be this amount, that's a half amount, right, into 2% pay rise. So the total salary will be.
So sad.
Can you see that? Now we got the answer.
Yes, but sometimes they don't have marks that last long.
Yeah, that's the thing. I can't tell you for sure. It depends on the marks scheme. But sometimes they can give you carried forward marks. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages of incremental budgeting. Advantages: incremental budgeting is very easy to perform. It makes it possible for a person even without an accounting background to perform it. Incremental budgeting is also very quick compared to other methods of budgeting. The information required to complete it is also very normally readily available. Disadvantages: on the other hand, incremental budgeting encourages inefficiencies, right? Because it does not question the preceding year's figures. We do not discuss, they are asking to look at both sides. On which it is based, no one asked how those figures even could be reduced. Similarly, in some organization, it encourages slack because departmental managers may attempt to use the entire budget up to 1 year even if they do not need to. just to ensure that the cash is available again next year. Right? You might like now remember in the same question that 14,000 just they took it, right? Without even meaning. So they have not understood the cost properly. Errors from one year are carried to the next since the previous year's figures are not questioned. Next one they asked you, briefly outline the three main steps involved in zero-based budgeting. What are the steps involved in zero-based budgeting? First, the managers have to identify the different activities, meaning the different costs that they want to spend for. Managers are then forced, activities are identified by managers. Managers are then forced to consider different ways of performing these activities. These activities are then described by what is called a what? Decision package. Then you have to analyze the cost in this decision package. You have to state why it is needed, the purpose. Identify alternative ways of achieving it, the purpose. Then you have to see out of the alternative method what's the best way of carrying it out. Establish the performance measures for the activity. Assess the consequence of not performing the activity at all or performing it at different levels. As regards this last point, the decision package may be prepared at the base level, representing the minimum level of service or support needed to achieve the objective. Further incremental packages may then be prepared to reflect higher levels of service. So this is the to give a basic service. This is the package we need to have, right? You have to come to a final conclusion after properly analyzing that package. And then you can say if you need to give more higher levels of service, more features need to be added to this decision package. Then you will rank all the packages in order of decreasing benefit. This will help management decide where to spend their money and what packages to choose. Right? This ranking of decision packages happens at numerous levels. There are many staff who are involved in that. The resources are then finally allocated based on whatever you have picked, based on order of priority up to the spending level. Use of ZBB at Newton School. Discuss meaning you look at both sides. When the word is discussed, you look at both sides. The extent to which ZBB could be used in Newton School to improve the budgeting process. So what are the benefits it will bring and what are the problems it may bring? Or is it suitable for them or not? You look at like a proper view. Right? So look at a comprehensive view. There is definitely a place for ZBB at Newton School. At the moment, incremental budgeting is responsible for recurring unexpected cash shortages because they are just using incremental budgeting and no proper consideration is taken to the situation, which is deterring new pupils from joining the school. Added deficit being predicted for the year 31st May 2003, perhaps 65,000 would have not been spent on improving the gym, and it would have not been necessary to close the school kitchen. ZBB would be good to establish the way cash is spent on those activities that are to a certain extent discretionary. So important expenses can be identified using ZBB, and expenses that are discretionary, not actually required, can be avoided. And if you avoid these expenses, you can avoid a deficit. So that's a big thing. Right. For example, although there is a need for pupils to have somewhere to eat lunch, it is not essential for children to have a quick cooked meal every day. It is essential that children do have somewhere to eat though. And as a bare minimum, they would need an area where they could sit and eat their sandwiches and have access to fresh water. ZBB would be used to put together decision packages which reflect the different levels of service available to the children. So how could have we given this service to them? We could have planned it ahead. For example, you could have planned whether the gym is important or the canteen is important.
But they need to be put there with the people.
Children have to bring food from home, but the ones who don't bring, what about them? In case like your parent misses food on one day, you go to the canteen, right? So it's important to have a canteen. And sometimes if your food is over and you're hungry, it's important to have a canteen in a school. It was unnecessary, so they could have identified that. They could have identified out of all these things what are the most important things. Having a canteen open is very important to a school because there are plenty of students, right? There may be students coming from homes where parents are working, so they don't have the time to prepare an extra meal, right? Sometimes students stay after school, right? So then the meals that you bought for the day are not enough. Canteen is very important to be in a school. For example, the most basic level of service could be the provision of an area for children to eat a lunch brought from home. The next level would be the provision of some cold and maybe some hot food for the children. It doesn't mean that they have to have hot food. Children may be just wanting a place to go and get basic food from, but on a self-service basis. Finally, the highest level of service would be a restaurant for the children where they get served hot meals at tables. At Newton School, the catering manager would prepare the decision package, and they would then decide upon by the head teacher, who would rank them accordingly and decide how we are going to do this based on our budgets. Similarly, although some level of sport education is needed, the extent of different activities offered is discretionary. ZBB could be used to create decision packages for each of these services in order to prioritize them better than they are currently being prioritized. Is a gym necessary in a school, right? ZBB takes a long time to implement and would not be appropriate to all categories of expenditure at school. Much of the budgeting is very straightforward. Incremental budgeting could still be used as a starting point for essential expenditures such as salary, provided that changes in staff numbers are also taken into account. So it doesn't mean that they only have to use ZBB. They can use incremental as well along with this. Right? There is an element of essential recurring expenditure in relation to repairs and maintenance. Since the cost of checks and repair needs to comply with health and safety standards seem to largely stay the same each year. Some expenses you can use incremental budgeting, but certain expenses, like where are you spending on the canteen, capital expenditure, for things like that you may have to use zero-based budgeting. Even like the gym, whether it's actually needed, or what are the current sports activities we have, instead of the gym, what do we have to prioritize, what do we have to make first, right? You could have identified using ZBB. For that capital expenditure, I feel they should use ZBB. That can be a conclusion. And for the other two, you can use incremental budgeting to a certain extent. What was the question you were talking about this point? TR Co is here. What is the doubt you had in TR Co? They have said TR Co's management has said that any pricing about paraffin should be based on the time it takes to make the 1,000 batch of drugs. And they have said, however, it is believed that 80% of learning exists in relation to production, and this will continue until the 1,000th batch have been completed.
So that is okay, right?
You took the total time to make 1,000 batches.
No, so even the time it takes for 1,000 one, right? So they multiply that by 250,000. Yeah, 250,000.
Yeah, because that's the time we are using for all. That's the average time for 1,000, the time taken for the 1,000th batch.
So what I did was,
They have told, TR Co's management has said that pricing decision about paraffin, so when you're calculating the price, it should be based on the time it takes to make the 1,000th unit. Yeah, because they are very clear, directly told here, you have to take the time to make the 1,000th unit. When you're making a pricing decision, you have to use the time it takes to make the 1,000th unit. So we have to find that and use it.
so what I did was, I got the average 2,000, right?
So you multiply that 1,000, then you have to find the average of, 999, multiply by the total of 999, time taken to find the 1,000th you find, and then multiply that by, because they are telling the pricing decision has been made on that. Right. They ask you to take, they have been very particular there. Any other doubts you had there? Other questions? It's 3:30 already. 3:15. I think we can do one more question before the break. Budgeting within Newton School. I want to do analytical techniques. I want to do the question on you know what? I want to know the question on this thing. Did I do this in class? Portail.
Yeah.
Yes, do you remember the question about Roboco?
Yeah, it's in the
Incremental budgeting.
Roboco is there in this thing. Wait a minute.
Always go wrong.
This I'm not doing. This you all know. No? This is not hard. Regression, but please try these questions because you all can get questions on regression, right? Okay, wait a minute. I'm looking for another more language question. You want to do Roboco? Roboco, is it there here? Yeah. Roboco, is it first chapter? First chapter means I want to, what is Roboco? It's relevant costing. I'm I'm mainly doing this areas today. Wait, this proper question is not there. I'm trying to look for all. What's there? Big chakos I've done.
Same, right?
Mostly it's repeating only.
It's exactly the same, but they don't have different requirements.
Yeah.
Because I'm almost, I think section 8. 8 for the way to needs halfway to section 6.
Theory don't miss, huh? You all have to, theory has to be good.
I find very, very.
Yeah, but you can't ignore theory. I said, wait, me, I won't do regression and all. You all know how to do it, right? But please try those questions. I want to do Bayako. Bayako has developed a new model of television. The estimated labor time for the first 12 unit is 12 hours, but a learning rate of 75% is expected to apply for the first 8 units produced. The learning index for a 75% learning rate is given. B is equal to minus 0.415. September's output, October's output, November's output, December's output is given. The different months, different outputs, and total overheads are given. What is the expected time for the production of the 8th television? Expected time for the production of the 8th television. How do you find that? Estimated labor time for the first unit is 12. But at a learning rate of 75, it is expected to apply for the first 8 units produced. 8th unit,
12.
we can use that doubling method, no? We don't have to use equation. Yeah. Then you can only find average, right? Yeah, you're fine for 7. So anyways, for 7, you have to use the equation. For 8, yeah, okay. We can first find, we can use the equation and say y equals what's the average time for 8th unit? Average time for 8 units. A time take to make the first unit. What's the average time?
5.06.
5.06?
Yeah.
What's the total time for 8 units? We need total time for 8 units. They are not asking you average time for 8 units. They are asking what's the expected time for the production of the 8th television. They are asking you time taken to make the 8th television. Total time for 8 is what? What's the average time for 7 units? This y equation, we can only find the average time. What's the total time for 7? Yeah, no, it looks so wrong. What's the time taken to make the 8th unit then? Time taken for the 8th unit. 40, this is the time taken for 8 and this was the total time for 7. So what's it? So how many hours? 3 hours. So you have to do it like that. If you took average time, you would have gone wrong.
You don't even get that for not to
That means
take the average time.
no. She went to take this answer. She went to take this answer and she went to say it's 5. So what happens? You go wrong. Right. Read the question carefully. Same question. The first phase of production has now been completed for the new television. The first unit actually took 12.5 hours to make, and the total time for the first 8 units was 34.3, at which point the learning effect came to an end.
Now only we have to take the.
What is the actual learning rate, and did the labor force learn more quickly or less quickly than planned? Here we can use that doubling method. The first unit took 12.5. Every time output doubles, the learning rate applies. Correct?
Yeah.
So here output has doubled how many times? 1, 2, 3. What's the... Oh, wait. We need the average time. We need the what time? Average time. Because the learning rate applies on what time? Yeah, so here total time was 12.5, average also 12.5. Here total time was 34.3. What is the average time?
4.2.
So how do you find R? 12.5 into R to the power 3 equals 4.29, correct? What's R equal to? Cube root.
This why
R is the learning rate. They're asking you what was the actual learning rate. They're asking you what was the actual learning rate. So I have to find R, right? So what is R equal to?
Isn't it 3?
Cube root, no? Shall I do the steps mathematical? Okay, I'll do.
3 to the power.
No, R to the power 3. R into R is what? R to the power 3. Not 3 here. R into R is what?
The equation.
R to the power 3.
That's not the other equation.
What other equation? Every time the output doubles, the average time reduces by the learning rate. So R once, R twice, R thrice.
It's not the minus B equation.
Wait a minute. But minus equation is not a minus equation. What is R to the power 3 equal to? 4, meaning R cube is equal to 4.29 divided by 12.5. What is R equal to?
0.5.
R to the power 3 is equal to what? What is R equal to then? R is equal to cube root this. What is it? So what's the learning rate? That means 70%. Correct. 70%. What was our expected learning rate? Expected learning rate was 75. So our expectation was 75% learning. That means time reduced by 25%. Actual learning is what? 70%, meaning time reduced only by 30%. So it has become what? Oh, time reduced by 30% now. It has become better. So 70% the labor learned more quickly.
Why 30%?
75% learning meaning what? 75% learning meaning what? Time reduced by 25%. 70% learning meaning what? Time reduced by 30%. So what is better? 30% time reduction is better, right?
Yeah.
So 70% is better. So they learn more quickly. You're okay, Asmat. What are you asking about the another equation?
No, I mean,
No, you have to find R like this here. It's very difficult to find R. The equation you can't find it.
the question
You can't do it the other way. You can't find because then the equation R won't come. So then you have to do it this way.
so the power is going to be like 715.
Okay. The overhead production costs are expected to be the same as the previous model for which the following data is available. Calculate the variable overhead cost per unit using the high-low method. Can you all do it by yourself?
Minus 7.7.
You got the answer? 97. Wrong.
Yeah, I would say
Take the highest and the lowest. 2000 and 1000. Can you see that? Always take the highest and lowest. Otherwise you will go wrong. It's such a simple 310 minus 200,000 divided by 2000 minus. You have to take the highest and lowest. I've pinpointed that many times. Yes, and even in class I've told that to students. Take the highest and the lowest. Otherwise you will go wrong. Identify by selecting from the relevant box in the table below whether each of the following statements regarding the learning curve model is true or false. Right? The learning rate shows the incremental time taken for each unit as the percentage of time taken for the previous unit of production. Every time output, learning rate shows the incremental time taken for each unit as a percentage of the time taken of the previous unit of production. Every time units produce doubles. Is that how you calculate it? The learning effect is most pronounced where the risk is repetitive. This task, sorry. The learning effect is most pronounced where the task is repetitive, when you do it again and again. The learning rate shows the incremental time taken for each unit. The increase in time?
the first one.
Is the learning curve about the increase in time
No, wait.
or the decrease in time?
As a percentage of the time taken when the production doubles, right? So when the production doubles.
Shows the incremental time taken. Really? Is learning rate about increase in time or decrease in time? When learning rate applies, time taken decreases or reduces? Is it increasing or decreasing? Shows the incremental time taken per unit of percent per time taken.
If we don't understand,
Wait, I'll come to that. Let me finish the others. The higher the learning rate in percentage, the more the time per unit falls as subsequent units of output are produced. Higher the learning curve, meaning lower the time falls by, no? The other side is lower, right? So, high labor turnover and breaks in production may reduce the learning effect. High labor turnover, laborers are always leaving and you're taking break. Yes. First one, the learning rate shows the incremental time taken for each unit. That is the increase in time taken for each unit as the percentage of time taken for the previous, as a, wait, they are saying, okay, they are saying you calculate learning rate by taking incremental time taken divide as a percentage of the time taken for previous unit. Is this how you calculate learning? For previous unit. This is how you calculate learning. You can write it and see. Correct. This is not how you calculate learning. Right? Okay,
they say it's double.
And
I mean, it's after the question.
I didn't read
If you
it.
have- The question was rephrase
Let me see.
double.
The first statement is incorrect. The learning rate shows how the cumulative average time per unit falls as the cumulative output doubles. It's about falling time, not about increasing time. That's what I was saying. Right? Which two of the following circumstances favor penetration pricing policy in relation to the launch of a new TV? Demand is inelastic. There are significant economies of scale. You can go with a low price. Company wishes to discourage new entrants to the market, so you are going with a low price. The product life cycle is short. If the product life cycle is short, we want to recover the money quickly, so it's skimming. Television has some new features that consumers value. If they are valuing it so much that others do not have, skimming. No, even in inelastic demand, we charge high prices because consumers are willing to pay high prices. So then you can take a break. And after the break, we'll continue with more questions. Right. What's the time now? It's 3:35. You all can come at 3:50. 15 minutes, okay?